The hotel at night was not silent. It was hushed. Silence was nothing, a void. Hush was full. Carpet muffling steps, elevators sighing like tired lungs, the ice machine in the far alcove coughing at uneven intervals. Even the pins on chains at the front desk had a rhythm when the air handler cycled, tapping faintly against the laminated guest folios. Daniel Ochoa lived in that hush 6 nights a week. His shift began when the evening staff clocked out and ended when the sun pushed through the glass doors in a pale wash that made everything in the lobby look less glamorous than it had overnight. He preferred nights. He told himself this every time his alarm went off at 10 p.m. He liked the way the hotel's velvet tones, polished brass, glass chandeliers, fake mahogany veneer, seemed softer without guests crowding the lobby. He liked how every sound became traceable. A door latch at 2 a.m. meant someone coming back from the bar. The steady whir of the printer meant invoices spooling for him alone. At 11:58 p.m., Daniel sat at the audit desk with a mug of coffee gone lukewarm, methodically working through the night balance. His handwriting was small, neat, columns aligned as if afraid to lean. The system did most of the heavy lifting now, but he still wrote the numbers by hand in the old ledger. Habit was a kind of ballast. The lobby smelled of lemon cleaner and fabric softener. A muted TV behind the bar played an infomercial with the sound off. And down the hall, faintly, the D&D tag swayed. Each was a simple rectangle of laminated card, red with white block letters. Do not disturb. They hung for brass knobs or handles, weightless as breath. But Daniel thought they looked alive. Tilted at different angles, they reminded him of fish in an aquarium, each holding still in the water but ready to dart if disturbed. He had never minded them until that night. He stood from his chair, stretching stiff shoulders, and walked the north wing. The carpet gave under his shoes like moss. At every other door, a tag waited, the white letters shining faint in the amber sconces. As he passed, he swore one moved. Not from draft. There was none, but from the tag itself. Paper brushing wood. Daniel stopped, heart tripping. He leaned closer. The hush thickened. Nothing. He touched the tag lightly. It was cool, inert. He gave a nervous laugh at himself. Too many shifts, too much caffeine. But when he turned away, the faintest murmur followed him. A sound smaller than speech, smaller than breath. He froze. The hallway looked the same. Carpet, sconces, rows of doors. Tags hanging obediently. He shook his head, returned to the desk, and tried to forget it. The audit would keep him grounded. Numbers never whispered. At 1:16 a.m., Daniel finished balancing the bar receipts. He stretched again, cracked his knuckles, then made another walk of the halls. He did it for circulation. The motion kept his body from stiffening in the low hum of the lobby. The 7th floor north corridor was long and hushed. He walked it slowly, counting doors. That's when he heard it. 2 tags across from each other, shifted as if in breeze. But no air moved. The HVAC was quiet here, and the curtains inside rooms were still. He paused, tilted his head. The left tag side. Words blurred but undeniable. Let me be unseen. The right tag rustled back. Let me be forgiven. Daniel's breath caught. He looked around wildly. Nobody in the hall. Every door closed. His scalp prickled. He leaned closer, lips parted. The tag on the left trembled once more, then hushed as if embarrassed. Behind a right-hand door, a guest coughed in their sleep. The tag stiffened, utterly still. Daniel backed away. His pulse was erratic, too fast for the quiet. He pressed his palms to his thighs and whispered, lack of sleep. Stress. That's all. But when he returned to the desk and picked up his pen to log the room checks, his hand betrayed him. On the page, without thought, he wrote, forgiven. The ink sat there, blue and stark against the ledger's lines. He stared at it until his eyes watered. By 2:30, Daniel had calmed enough to pour fresh coffee. The scent filled the lobby, bitter and steady. He set the mug down and rubbed at the word forgiven until the paper nearly tore. That's when Mr. Finn shuffled past. The old bellman was half retired, kept on the payroll because the manager couldn't imagine mornings without his presence. He wore his uniform with pride, buttons polished, but his gait was slow, one hip stiffer than the other. He pushed a laundry cart that squeaked faintly over the carpet. "You're listening too much," Finn said without looking up. Daniel blinked. To what? The doors. Finn's voice was dry velvet, frayed but rich. "The tags. This hotel keeps its own nights. Best not to eavesdrop." Daniel tried to laugh. "You hear them too?" But Finn didn't answer. The cart's wheels hummed down the corridor, fading into the hush. Daniel looked at the pins on chains. One swayed slightly, though no one had touched it. He reached to still it. When he looked up, down the hall, one tag tilted toward him. And in a voice like paper against wood, it whispered distinctly, "Daniel." Daniel couldn't let it go. At 3 a.m., while the hotel was as still as it ever got, he walked the halls again. This time he brought the old audit clipboard. Not the official ledger, but a battered piece of chipboard with hotel stationery clipped onto spring. He told himself he was doing inventory. Security check. But he kept the pen poised, ready. The fourth floor smelled faintly of stale perfume. A cluster of doors bore the red rectangles, angled slightly different from one another. As he passed, a tag flinched against its door, a tiny FDHP of paper on wood. "Let me be alone," it said. Daniel jotted it, heart thudding. "Room 412. Want to be alone." Another tag whispered as he passed. "Let them call back. I'll answer this time." "Room 415. Call back." His handwriting shook. The pen on its chain rattled faintly every time he lifted it from the page. By the time he finished the circuit, he had written down 6 phrases. Half longings, half denials. They read more like prayers than requests. Back at the desk, he slipped the paper into a drawer before anyone could see. The next night, Daniel checked the guest list against his notes. Room 412. Mr. Holcomb, business traveler, never left his room except for ice. Alone indeed. Room 415. A woman named Jansen, extended stay, always on the lobby phone, face tight with waiting. The whispers weren't nonsense. They matched. He told himself it was coincidence, his mind playing tricks with things he already knew. But at 1:47 a.m., walking past 618, the tag murmured, "Let me forget the hospital smell." Daniel wrote it down. In the morning, when housekeeping cleared 618, he overheard them gossiping. The guest's suitcase was filled with hospital brochures, the kind you carried home when you had nowhere else to go. Daniel folded the slip of paper tighter. His palms were damp. The tags weren't just whispering. They were telling him who the guests wanted to be. On his third night of listening, Daniel lingered too long in front of 709. The tag there breathed faintly. "Don't let me close my eyes." He bent closer. That's when the door opened. A woman in her early 30s stood barefoot in the doorway, hair loose, dark eyes sharp even at 2 a.m. She looked at him, then at the clipboard. "What are you doing?" she asked. Daniel stammered. "Room check. Just making sure everything's—" "You were listening." Her tone was steady, not accusing, more like she was confirming something. He straightened, embarrassed heat climbing his neck. "I heard something." She glanced at the tag, still swaying on its string. "They talk," she said simply. "You know that, don't you?" Daniel stared at her. "You hear them." She nodded once. "You should be careful. They don't stop once they know you're listening." Before he could respond, she shut the door softly. The tag whispered again, almost immediately, as if eager now. "Don't let me close my eyes." Daniel wrote it down with shaking fingers. The following night, Daniel arrived 10 minutes early. The lobby lights were dimmed, brass railings dulled by shadow, and the faint smell of industrial carpet cleaner hung in the air. The evening shift clerk nodded, grateful to escape, and left Daniel with the quiet. He started his rounds earlier than usual, clipboard tucked under his arm, half expecting the tags to greet him before midnight. But the halls were unusually subdued. The cards hung motionless, no whispers, no tremors. He wondered if they sensed his anticipation, if they chose when to reveal themselves. At 12:30, while logging bar receipts, he heard the squeak of Mr. Fenn's cart. The old bellman came from the service hallway, shoulders stooped, cap slightly askew, pushing a mound of linens that smelled faintly of bleach and starch. "You're prowling too much," Finn said as he drew near, voice low but steady. Daniel looked up, startled. "Just doing checks." Not the kind the manager asks for. Finn's gaze was sharp despite his age. I know that look. I had it once. Daniel hesitated. You heard them too? Finn parked the cart, leaned against it with both hands. This hotel's been here longer than either of us. Walls learn things. Tagged are only paper, sure, but you hang enough on doors, enough nights in a row, they start holding more than ink. I used to linger like you do. Heard little sighs, little words. Didn't keep a book, though. That was my mistake. Why a mistake? Daniel asked, heartbeat quickening. Because memory lies. You tell yourself you imagined it. You convince yourself the hotel doesn't talk. But paper remembers better than us. A ledger keeps you honest. Daniel said nothing, fingers tightening around his clipboard. Finn's eyes softened. Just don't listen too hard. There was another before me. Concierge, back when we had one. He leaned in too close, too often. One night, he wasn't at the desk anymore. All they found was a tag swinging on the staff room door. Daniel swallowed hard. And you believe? Finn shrugged, pushing his cart again. Believe what you like. I just work my shifts. The cart squeaked away, leaving the hush behind. Daniel stared down the hall, where a single tag tilted slightly as if eavesdropping on them. He made himself look away. But later, in the margins of his ledger, he wrote, Staff room tag, truth? Daniel started a second book the next night. Not the official audit ledger with neat numbers and signatures, but a plain spiral notebook he bought from the hotel gift shop, the kind tourists scribbled postcards in. He tucked it beneath the desk, where only he could reach. The whispers came back in force, as if eager to fill new pages. At 1:04 a.m., room 223, don't let the phone ring. At 1:37, room 504, keep her from finding me. At 2:11, room 612, I want to start over. He wrote them down carefully, date and time, room number, phrase. The act of recording steadied him. The voices seemed less like hallucinations when ink fixed them, but sometimes the tags whispered things he could not write. Sounds that were not words, but emotions, grief spilling like water, laughter caught mid-breath. He tried to describe them anyway. Room 330. Sounded like a birthday candle blown out. When he closed the notebook, his hands ached. Soil from a potted fern near the desk had found its way under his nails somehow. He stared at the dirt until it seemed alive. At 3 a.m., he rose to check the north wing. Halfway down the hall, he paused. A tag whispered his name again. Daniel. He froze. This time it added more, hang me. He backed away, chest tight, the notebook pressed against him. Back at the desk, the pens on chains rattled faintly, though no one had touched them. One swung in a steady arc, pendulum-like, until he steadied it with a trembling hand. He opened the notebook again and wrote, They know me. Celia was waiting for him on the 7th floor. He found her barefoot in the corridor, hair tucked behind her ears, nightgown long enough to brush the carpet. She leaned against the wall beside her door, arms crossed. You're making them restless, she said before he could speak. Daniel clutched his notebook. The tags, they're louder when you're near. She tilted her head, studying him. Why do you work nights, mister? Ochoa. Daniel. He shifted, uncomfortable under her gaze. It suits me. That's not an answer. He didn't reply. The hush between them deepened, filled only by the hum of the ice machine somewhere distant. Celia glanced at the tag on her door, which swayed gently, though no air stirred. Mine won't shut up. Keep saying, don't let me close my eyes. You wrote it down, didn't you? Daniel stiffened. How? She smiled faintly. I've seen you. Clipboard, pen leaning close. Do you think we don't notice? The guests who can't sleep hear you in the hall. He flushed. I didn't mean, it doesn't bother me, she said softly. But you should know what you're carrying. Wishes are heavier than ledgers. He wanted to ask what hers meant, why she feared sleep, but she was already turning back to her door. Be careful, Daniel, she said. Once they learn your name, they don't stop. The tag whispered as she went inside. Stay awake with me. Daniel stood frozen, the carpet swallowing his weight until the hallway was empty again. He opened the notebook and wrote, Celia, 709, awake forever. By his 4th week of listening, Daniel had filled nearly half the spiral notebook. He wrote not only the phrases, but sketches of the tags themselves. The way one bent its corner, another had a thumb smudge near the hole for the handle. They were becoming individuals to him, not just cards. That night, curiosity pushed him towards something reckless. He wanted to know whether the wishes belonged to the tags or to the guests behind them. At 1:22 a.m. in the south wing, he paused at room 318. Its tag whispered plaintively, "Don't let the morning come." Daniel slipped the tag free, hands sweating. Across the hall, room 319's door was bare. He hung the tag there, heart hammering. He walked away quickly, pretending calm, but his mind buzzed. 2 hours later, a guest from 319 came down, pajamas twisted, face pale. She asked for a late checkout in a voice close to tears. "I just can't stand the morning," she whispered. Daniel granted it, throat dry. Back upstairs, he returned the tag to 318's door. Behind it, he heard muffled snoring, peaceful, almost childlike. He fled to the lobby. For the rest of the shift, his palms stung as though paper had cut them. He couldn't stop thinking, was it coincidence? Or had he handed someone else's wish to the wrong guest? He wrote in the spiral, "Wishes migrate. Careful." Later that week, Mr. Alvarez, an older man who stayed monthly, shuffled down to the desk at 3 a.m. His bathrobe belt dragged like a tail. He always asked for hot water and lemon, though he never drank it. That night, as Daniel fetched a kettle, Alvarez leaned over the desk. His breath smelled faintly of cigars. "You keep good notes," he said softly. Daniel froze. "What notes?" Alvarez smiled without humor. "They whisper to you, don't they? The tags. They always do, eventually." Daniel tried to hide his spiral notebook under an invoice, but Alvarez's eyes flicked knowingly. "I lost my wife in this hotel," Alvarez murmured. "Years ago. Heart gave out in 215. Since then, every tag I hang whispers her last words back at me." He paused. Not the words she said, the words I wanted her to say. Daniel stared. "And what are they?" Alvarez's eyes glistened. "Forgive me." Daniel swallowed. He wanted to say he understood. Instead, he slid the hot water across the counter. Alvarez carried it upstairs and never came back down. In the notebook, Daniel wrote, 215, "Forgive me. Always." It started with a hum. The ice machine at the far end of the hall was as old as the hotel itself, or so Fenn claimed. It rattled and sighed in odd rhythms, dropping cubes into its belly with metallic crashes. Guests often complained. Management always promised to replace it, but stayed. One night, at 2:45, Daniel lingered near it. He realized the hum wasn't random. It rose and fell like breathing, then shifted into low tones that almost formed words. He leaned close. The machine exhaled cold air over his hands, and beneath the mechanical buzz he heard dozens of voices whispering at once, the tags bleeding into the pipes. "Don't see me. Call me back. Stay awake. Forgive me." It was a chorus, dozens of wishes at once, tangled. He staggered back, dizzy. From behind him, Finn's voice, "Don't stand too close. It's their meeting place." Daniel turned. "Their what?" "The tags," Finn said, eyes heavy with exhaustion. "They gather here. Same as staff gather by the coffee machine. You hear too many at once, you'll forget which thoughts are yours." Daniel's throat was dry. "You hear it too?" "Not anymore." Finn wheeled his cart past. "I stopped listening." "You should too." But Daniel couldn't. That night, in his spiral, he wrote, "Ice machine equals parliament. Dangerous." Daniel remembered the young couple in 422. Newlyweds, loud laughter at check-in, honeymoon package. At 3 a.m., he walked past their door. The tag whispered faintly, "Let this last forever." Sweet, he thought. Harmless. But in the morning, housekeeping reported the room untouched. The bed unslept in. The couple had vanished overnight, luggage gone, key cards left on the nightstand. The tag still hung on the door, swaying gently. When Daniel touched it, it whispered again, softer, "Forever." He locked himself in the staff restroom until his breathing steadied. By then, Daniel's spiral was nearly full. He had dozens of pages of wishes, pleas, fragments. The ink seemed darker on those pages, as if soaked heavier than normal. But one night at 3:30, he flipped open the notebook and found fresh writing in his own hand, though he hadn't made it. Daniel 001. Let me stop keeping the books. He dropped the pen. His chest tightened. The room assignment 001 didn't exist. The lowest guest floor was 2. The pens on chains at the desk swung, all at once, clattering faintly like bells. Daniel shoved the notebook into the drawer, slammed it shut. But he couldn't unsee it. The ledger was keeping him, too. The same night, near dawn, he found Celia in the lobby lounge. She sat in one of the high-backed chairs, hair tangled, staring at nothing. "You don't sleep," Daniel said softly. She looked at him. "I can't. If I do, I don't wake." Her tag had begged, "Don't let me close my eyes." "Why are you here?" he asked. Celia shrugged. "Sometimes the hotel catches people who have nowhere else to go. It keeps us until it decides." Her eyes gleamed in the dim light. "And now it's deciding about you." He dreamt the hotel had no lobby. It was all hall. No elevators, no fire exits, just a long, carpeted corridor that turned and turned until turns meant nothing. The carpet was the hotel's current pattern. Taupe vines on a dusk blue field. But in the dream, the vines slithered, real as rope, and the blue drank light like an evening pond. The sconces breathed instead of burned. Every few yards, a brass handle waited without a door, and from the handles hung red rectangles that read, "Do not disturb" in block letters, lit from within. They were whispering the way leaves whisper when a storm decides on a direction. Daniel tried to pick out a single voice and couldn't. The words braided themselves into one thick sound, like the ice machine when it forgot how to be a machine and became a chorus. He walked until the hush underfoot became a rhythm, and the rhythm became a pulse, and the pulse became his. Pins on chains dangled from the walls at shoulder height the way ivy puts out tendrils. When he passed, they tapped against the paint like inquisitive beaks. He lifted one, and it wrote by itself on his palm. "Daniel," ink cold and insistent. "Then stay." He turned a corner and met himself coming the other way, ledger under his arm. That version's eyes were rimmed with the faint red of a person who had slept in someone else's life for years. They stared at each other, and for a ridiculous second, both tried to step aside, each choosing the same direction and then the other, the old hallway waltz of two polite ghosts. "You'll be late," the other Daniel said, voice flat with use. "The audit waits." "What room are you in?" the real one asked, or the dream one? He could not tell. The other smiled without heat. "I'm on the service level. We all are in the end." He pointed down a side corridor Daniel hadn't noticed. It ran narrower, the carpet darker, the air colder, as if the ventilation had a different idea of comfort. At the far end, in a deep shadow between two humming panels, the sound had the quality of ice without the temperature. A door hung without a number. Where the peephole should have been, there was only a small brass tag. 0. The D&D card on that door swayed on an invisible draft. That one's whisper wasn't a whisper. It was silence shaped into a word. Here. Daniel's chest tightened, the way a chest tightens when a wave stands up to meet you higher than you expected. He took a step toward the door, then another. He could feel the chain, pen still dragging ink across his palm, without permission. Stay turned to SD, and then a smear like a cut. When he was 3 steps away, the carpet lifted the smallest amount. You had to watch for it at the hotel. The way thick pile made small hills, and he stumbled. The hush caught him. The D&D tag rang once, a sound you only hear when paper decides at his bell. He woke sitting upright at the audit desk. The pen in his hand scratched across the margin of the real ledger, leaving small black loops on paper that did not ask for loops. The pens on chains were swaying from an air handler that wasn't on. The ice machine hummed from the far hall, steady as a tired animal. In the margin, his loops formed a word he didn't remember shaping. Room 0. He shut the ledger and put both palms on it, as if it might run. The lobby clock told him it was 3:19 a.m. The carpet was behaving itself. The sconces were obeying the switch. His palms still showed SD, in faint blue where the dream pen had written. He rubbed at it and raised the ghost of the word, the way old words stay on skin even after you wash. He walked a loop of the lobby because the body needs loops to turn fear in a breath. The elevator doors reflected him in various metals, each a slightly truer version of the same man. The D&D card on the staff room hung perfect and mute. When he dared the 7th floor north corridor, he kept to the middle where the carpet wore a path of safety from luggage and housekeeping carts. The tag on 709 tilted the smallest degree when he passed, slowing him without command. He stood. He listened. Daniel. It whispered, and though he knew it wasn't Celia's voice, he heard her wanting in it. Stay awake with me. The ice machine coughed 3 cubes into itself like punctuation. He added the line to the spiral. He wrote the dream down too, shame prickling his scalp at the childishness of it. But he had learned Finn's lesson. Paper remembered better than men. Before dawn, he sat at the desk and watched the pens, the glass, the carpet. Everything behaved. He told himself behavior was the same as truth. When the first pale square of morning stepped in through the front doors, he allowed his shoulders to drop. He stretched his fingers, felt the dirt from the potted fern embedded around his nails again, and could not recall putting his hands in soil. He scrubbed at them in the staff sink until they were pink and tender, and still the half-moons of earth clung. The quiet had a way of keeping what it liked. It was a Wednesday, the kind that feels like a hallway inside a week, when Finn told him the whole of it. They stood in the service corridor between laundry and housekeeping, where a fan cut the air into slices and the floor held on a heat because it had been catching drier breath all day. Finn's cart was empty. He used it the way a man uses a cane he's decided to disguise as something else. You're not sleeping, Finn observed. Daniel gave a short laugh. I work nights. Plenty of folk work nights. They either sleep or drink. You're listening instead. It's worse. Daniel leaned against the cinder block wall, grateful for its simplicity. Tell me the story, he said, surprising himself with the neatness of the demand. The concierge. Finn's hands arranged themselves on the cart handle like birds, turning their minds toward flight and changing it. He had your face, he said. Different bones, same attention. He came when the hotel was younger, before the last renovation, when people dressed to be seen. He knew where to find a pair of cufflinks at 3 a.m. He knew how to talk a guest down from the kind of trouble you don't make in daylight. He heard them, Daniel said. He listened, Finn corrected. Everyone hears. Only a few listen. Finn pushed the cart with one hand, letting it roll a foot, catching it with a toe against the wheel. He started writing them down, too, not like your spiral. He used the back of the guest book, the one under the glass at the desk, ran the ink right under the names of people who signed it for vanity. Their wishes threaded with their signatures, the way ivy finds brick. Daniel pictured it and was embarrassed by the beauty his mind supplied. Ink braided with ink, one kind of self tangled with another. What happened? He got good at giving people what they wanted before they asked. A woman would come down, collar tight with decision, and he'd have a tag in his pocket that said, "Let me be brave," and he'd hang it on her door without a word and she'd be brave. He moved the "Don't let morning come" tags to the rooms with the men who overpromised themselves sleep. He gave away quiet like it was complimentary breakfast. Finn's voice changed. There was no accusation in it, only fatigue. Then one night, he put a tag on the staff door. "The one with the swing," Daniel said, before he could stop himself. "The same." Finn's mouth took on the shape of a man who had tasted too many versions of story and chosen the one that didn't lie. We all thought it was a joke. The swing lasted longer than a draft would give it. When I came in at 6, the tag was still moving. He wasn't at the desk. No one had checked in or out. The night had been too easy. Daniel swallowed. The sound his throat made was small in the laundry hum. Where did he go? Finn set his palm flat on the cart and pushed it a foot as if to mark distance. Room 0, if you like stories. I don't like stories, Daniel lied. Then call it the service back corridor behind the ice machine. Finn said, patient as if speaking to linen, not a man. Call it a door that isn't a door until you hear it. Call it the place where all the wishes live when they get bored of being wishes. Daniel closed his eyes a second because he could hear it, or he could hear himself hearing it. The corridor in his dream didn't have laundry heat or cinder block or a clever old man standing inside it telling him to stop. It had carpet that took people the way soft ground takes the heel of a shoe. He kept his eyes shut anyway and said, because he wanted something solid, was he happy there? Finn's mouth set. He was missing here. And you stayed. Finn's laugh had the dry quality of paper when it's been folded too many times. Somebody had to move the sheets. He turned the cart out of the corridor. The plastic wheels hummed in their small way. Halfway down the service hall, without turning back, Finn said, "You can hang a tag on your own life, you know. Not many do. Most of us let other people hang it for us." "What would mine say?" Daniel asked. Though he knew asking Brett answers he'd have to look at. Finn didn't oblige. He kept walking. The ice machine coughed 3 cubes like the end of a sentence. That night, when Daniel was alone again with the brass and the carpet and the pins that had their own opinions of gravity, he opened the spiral, intending to write Finn's story down the way you write down weather. To have something to say when someone asks why your hair is damp. The pen hovered, then dropped. His hand would not make the letters. The space after concierge went on and on until he had to press his palm over it to remind paper it had borders. He checked the hulls instead. Ridiculous as that was. Checking was a ritual, and rituals are for fear. On 2:15, Mr. Alvarez's tag quivered without wind. "Forgive me," it breathed, steady as the whir of the ice machine, which he could hear even here through walls. On 4:22, the honeymoon door had no tag, no couple, only a polished brass oval where fingers touched and left a memory of skin that housekeeping could not read. He stopped at the end of the north wing and leaned against the wall where the paint had been touched up once with almost the right color. He let the hush soak him. The tags on both sides hung quiet. He thought, not for the first time, that this was the whole of what he wanted, to be in a place that existed to say, "Do not disturb," on behalf of people who didn't know how to say it for themselves. And then, almost as if it had heard him ask the wrong small question, a tag at his left shoulder whispered, very gently, "Daniel, hang me." It had no room number attached to the sound. It came from nowhere a door could claim. He did not write that down. He carried it in his chest like a borrowed card, one he would have to return without bending, and it warmed him and made breathing difficult in equal measure. Celia started appearing the way certain songs do in a place where a song has no right to be. Twice he found her in the stairwell at the half landings, barefoot, sitting on the cool, painted concrete with her knees up and her chin on them, gazing at the metal sign that said "No smoking," as if there might be instructions hidden under the obvious. "Can't sleep?" he asked the first time, startled into banality. "Shouldn't," she said. "If I do, I forget to start breathing again. The tags told me." He sat 2 steps below her so he wouldn't tower over a woman who had made herself small. The stairwell smelled of old wet wool and a cleaner with wintergreen ambitions. From the far end of the hall, the ice machines hummed bent around the corner like a voice lowered in a church. "What did it say before that?" Daniel asked, because the beginning of a wish is sometimes where it weakens. "Don't let me close my eyes," she quoted, with a lightness that made it worse. Then, after I didn't for 4 nights, it added, "You can rest now." "And you didn't trust it," Daniel said. "Would you?" She looked at him. Her irises were a brown, so dark they borrowed the stairwell shadow. "You trust them more than you ought to. You're making them bolder." "Finn says the hotel keeps its own nights," he offered, discovering he wanted to see what she would do with Finn the way you hand a stranger a word you like and watch them taste it. She smiled at the name. "Finn's a tree that learned concierge." The building grew him. "He's harmless." "Were you always here?" he asked. He'd meant to ask it kindly and heard the other thing in it. "Do you belong?" "The hotel taught you that kind of inventory." "Off and on," she said. "Hospitals, couches, a brother's spare room. I stayed in too long. But here I can ask a door not to knock. People don't like when you do that out there." He thought of his own apartment. A square of light, a clean sink, a bed always made because it felt wrong to unmake it for himself. He thought of how quiet turned mean in that place. Not hush, just a skinny nothing that made clocks large. "I understand," he said, and he did. She looked down at his hands. "You keep dirt under your nails." He flush-checked his fingers, already knowing. "From the fern at the desk," he lied. Then, because she was a person who looked where you thought she couldn't, he added, Maybe from the jobs I never take. I don't know. She let the joke hang without rewarding it. I need to ask you a favor, she said after a beat. The word favor in a hotel at 3 a.m. is a tuning fork. Daniel wanted to put his fingers in his ears and hum. A tag for me, she said. The heavy kind. The blunt one. The one that means no, even if I'm polite about it. You already have one, he said carefully. They all say don't let me close my eyes, she finished for him. That's begging. I don't want to beg. I want to ask. I want one that says do not disturb and means it like a law. He almost told her the cards were just laminated expectations. He almost told her the cards had their own ideas but took tone from whoever hung them. He almost asked who she wanted to keep out. She spared him the need. My ex, she said. He's back from a contract. He'll come. He is always gentle at the desk. He smiles. He asks for Celia's room, and because he doesn't shout the registrar, gives it to him eventually. I do not want a confrontation with a man who has learned to make his asking into a permission. The stairwell held the words the way a pocket holds a coin. Too heavy for the cloth, too light for the hand. Daniel nodded because the body needs a gesture to show it has heard. I can mark your file to not release your room number, he said, already reaching in his mind for a form. Do that, she said, but I want a door to help me, too. They listen to you. They lean toward you. She smiled without enjoying it. You don't see it because you're the field the wind is moving through. But I see grass. He had nothing to give her but the thing she asked. He stood, wiped his palms on his trousers, felt the grit there grind. Hotel dirt, fern dirt, a bit of carbon from printer ribbon that never quite dusted off. I'll bring you a new tag, he said. I'll hang it myself. In front of 709, the red rectangle already swayed into the corridor and back towards Celia's knees. He pulled it free. The card's edges were glossy with use. A corner had softened where a thumb had worried it. He took a new one from his pocket. Housekeeping kept a stack in the caddy along with extra laundry bags and folded registration cards. He breathed on the new card without meaning to. The breath fogged nothing but changed everything. His breath felt recorded. He wrote nothing on it. He hung it. He set it down on the brass in one fluid, ordinary motion, the way a person sets a mug within reach of a hand that is held too tight to open. The card settled and then moved of its own, one slow nod. The chain pin in his breast pocket tapped the plastic of his ID. The ice machine far and said coo, as if starting to cough and thinking better of it. From inside the room, Celia's voice came through the seam between door and frame, calm as the blank side of a card. Thank you. He logged it. 709, fresh tag. No disturbances. He didn't write X. He didn't write favor. He wrote it the way you write things you want to be true in the official book, so that if a manager reads it in the morning, they will nod and not call you in. At the desk, the pens had drifted outward, small planets reconsidering orbits. He brought them back to center, patient the way you must be to make order that will be undone the moment a draft remembers its job. Through the next hours, the tags leaned toward him and away. 215 whispered, forgive me, like a metronome. 319 muttered, let the morning be late in a tired child's cadence. Somewhere a door that had not moved in months rolled its latch like a shoulder, checking whether it could still bear weight. At 4:10, the elevator opened, and a man stepped out with a duffel and a smile that understood desks. He did not look toward Daniel until he was 3 paces away. Men like that make you lean to them. Good morning, he said, offering a card that smiled too. I'm looking for Celia. Daniel kept his hands on the counter where managers can see them in camera stills. I'm afraid I can't share guest information. It's not information, the man said, with practiced easiness. It's courtesy. We have to apply our policy to everyone, Daniel said in the voice the hotel had taught him. The one that never wavered because it belonged to the desk, not the man. If you'd like to leave a note, I can attach it to her file. The man's smile hardened by half a degree. He was good. He took it back a degree, and for a moment they saw each other seeing it. Of course, he said pleasantly. Could you ring her room, then? Let her know I'm here. Daniel's finger found the cursor on the screen without looking. His other hand found, under the counter, the spiral. The tag in his pocket warmed the smallest amount, as if to remind him of breath. I can't disturb her, he said, and this time the sentence had a weight the policy didn't give it. Her tag is hung. He watched the man understand that the word hung had been chosen on purpose. He watched the man ask himself if he wanted a scene with a person who could say hung like that and make it stick to the air. Leave a note, Daniel said again, normal. The man wrote nothing. He smiled his best approximation of harmlessness and walked back to the elevator. The doors closed, gentle as a hand on a shoulder. Daniel let himself breathe in stages, small portions of air like counting coins. The line of pins on chains had drifted outward again at some point during the exchange. He brought them back, 3 taps in a row, and they were still. He went upstairs once the elevator had rolled the man away for a time. The tag on 709 hung flat, as a sign should hang when it has been listened to. He touched the bottom edge with one finger the way superstition teaches you to touch the lintel of a field you cross. It gave him nothing back. That was the gift. When he came down, Finn was at the desk, signing something that did not need signing, eyes kind and complicated. You did your job, Finn said simply. I hung a tag, Daniel said, and heard how proud and afraid it sounded. Start there, Finn said. He didn't mean the words Daniel thought he meant. He meant the other ones that only show themselves when the carpet hush is so complete you can hear the pin on its chain, memorizing the shape your hand makes as it leaves. By now, Daniel's spiral notebook was swollen, its spine bowed, the pages feathered with use. He kept it hidden under the audit desk, but the tag seemed to know when he opened it. At 1:12 a.m., while copying receipts into the official ledger, he glanced down. The spiral had slid halfway out of the drawer. He was sure he hadn't left it that way. He tugged it free, flipped it open. The last page was full of writing in his hand, but not his memory. Daniel Ochoa, do not disturb. Daniel Ochoa, do not disturb. Daniel Ochoa, do not disturb. Over and over, a full page. The pens on chains swayed, faintly as if stirred by someone walking past. No one had. The lobby was empty, carpet breathing quietly. Daniel gripped the notebook until his knuckles went pale. He wanted to rip the page out, but part of him feared what would happen if he destroyed a message the tags had taken the trouble to leave. He closed the spiral, shoved it back in the drawer, and told himself to focus on the numbers. But his pulse ticked faster with every invoice. And when he lifted his coffee to his mouth, he saw a faint blue stain on his thumb, like he'd been writing all along. At 2:30 a.m., a man in his 60s came to the desk, hair mussed, shoes untied. He wanted new sheets, said his were damp. Daniel fetched them, followed him up. In the hall outside, 305, he noticed the tag. It whispered faintly, "Let me sleep without dreaming." The man caught him listening and smiled wearily. "It's not wrong," he admitted. "Dreams keep me busy when I just want rest." He took the sheets, shut the door, and Daniel stood alone with the tag swaying. Without dreaming, it whispered again, softer now, as though tired itself. Back at the desk, he added it to the spiral. Then, without quite meaning to, he wrote, "Daniel, sleep without dreaming." It was a Tuesday when the vents joined in. He was on the 5th floor, checking that the fire doors were latched, when he heard it. A susurration, faint at first, then layered. The HVAC system was humming words. He pressed his ear to the grate. The air whispered, "Don't disturb me, don't disturb me, don't disturb me." Over and over, multiplied by echoes. The corridor tags swayed in unison, as though nodding. Daniel pulled back, spine crawling. His rational mind screamed about air pressure, ductwork harmonics, tired ears. But the notebook under his arm was already warm, as if waiting for him to document. He scrawled fast. The vents repeat the tags. They carry the wishes through the whole hotel. Everyone is breathing them. The thought rooted in him. Maybe that's why guests stayed, why some never left. The air itself was full of wishes, recirculated like oxygen. Housekeeping left 422 untouched for weeks. Management quietly reclassified it, out of order. One night Daniel passed by. The tag was still there. He swore it had faded from red to rose, like old cloth left in the sun. It whispered, "Forever." He almost tore it down, just to end the sound. But he couldn't. His hand froze an inch away, as if some rule forbade it. He walked away shaking. At 3:11 a.m., The ice machine coughed a thunderous rattle of cubes. Daniel jumped, heart pounding, and hurried down the hall. The alcove smelled faintly of frost and metal. Tags hung nearby, twitching as though disturbed. And then, clear as speech, a voice rose from one tag. Not a whisper. A voice, low and steady. Hang me on your life. Daniel staggered back. His pulse roared. Another tag swayed and joined. You audit us all. Audit yourself. He turned, desperate, and nearly collided with Celia. She was barefoot, hair tangled, eyes sharp in the dim. You heard them, she said softly. He nodded, throat dry. They'll keep asking, she murmured. And if you say yes, you won't clock out again. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice cracked. What happens if I do? Celia's expression was sad, tender. Then the night keeps you, and the day stops looking for you. They took the long way back to the lobby, as if a different route might shake the voices from the vents. Celia didn't touch the walls. She kept her hands folded, as if touching less would mean keeping more of herself. Daniel matched her pace and tried not to hear the tags tug at their strings as they passed. Why did you come here the first time? He asked, though he already knew it was a clumsy question. The hotel taught you to make everything sound like a form, because this place knows what there is to ask for. She smiled without lifting the corners of her mouth. That sounds sentimental. It isn't. I'd worn out my welcome everywhere else. Couch after couch. A cousin's futon, a roommate's patience, a church basement where the coffee burned. She glanced toward the ceiling. The vents breathed back. Here I could hang a card on the door and be, if not safe, then contained. That's different than safe, but it works. They paused at a half landing. The metal sign, "No," smoking reflected the low amber light. He'd never noticed the scratches under the O, tiny hash marks a board attendant might have carved decades ago. The first night, she said, I slept for 18 hours. Woke up with the tag stuck to my arm like it had chosen me instead of the other way around. She laughed, then stopped. Then he started visiting again. The polite knocking, the moderate tone. He can say please without it sounding like a request. Daniel pictured the man at the desk, the smile that had been designed to pass. He said, he won't get your room for me. He meant it so simply it surprised him. I know, she said. I watched you send him away. You speak policy like a prayer. I wish I could borrow your voice. They reached the lobby. The carpet hush received them. Night made the crystal in the chandelier look like the bones of a different animal. Celia stepped to the desk and rested her fingers near the row of pens on chains. Even that small nearness made them sway. Do you ever hang one for yourself? She asked. Daniel looked at the spiral under the counter and felt the whole drawer warm. Not yet, he said. You will, she said quietly. Everyone does, in here or out there. Some just don't make a ceremony of it. He made himself smile. If I hang it, do I get to pick the font? She smiled back gently. You'll get the hotel's font. She tapped the counter once with a knuckle, a little drumbeat of assurance. Keep listening, Daniel. But take rests. Even orchestras have rests. She turned, bare feet silent on the carpet, and the elevator doors parted for her as if the hotel had shifted its timing to spare her waiting. The lobby breathed. The ice machine coughed far away. Daniel opened the spiral and wrote, Celia, first night, 18 hours, chosen by tag. Then rests. He closed the book and found his hand wouldn't leave the cover. The cardboard was warm as a dog asleep in sun. He checked the staff email for something to anchor him. Banalities about towel inventory and a reminder to refresh the bowl of fruit that no one ate after midnight. He clicked the calendar and stared at his own name in the shift blocks, the repeating Ochoa, D, marching on like weather you can't skip. He signed a cigarette Log Mr. Finn kept for no good reason, a ritual from a time when bellmen filed everything. The pen dragged. When he lifted it, the chain swung once and knocked against the laminated "In case of emergency" placard. The sound was soft, almost human, a little apology. He decided to walk. The north wing was quiet as an old chapel. Tags pointed toward him like seagrass toward a current. In the exact center of the hallway, he stopped and looked up at the tiny lens in the ceiling. The camera's red pinprick winked. He imagined the feed. A man standing still in a carpeted ocean while little red flags pivoted toward him on their strings. Anyone watching would call security. No one ever watched. Halfway back to the lobby, he passed 215. The tag there breathed its faithful metronome. Forgive me. Forgive me. He thought of Mr. Alvarez's robe trailing on the carpet like a surrender flag. Forgiveness, repeated, wears at the same place until the wool thins. He pressed his palm to his sternum and felt the small, ordinary hammer of his heart and thought, not for the first time, that his body had kept him longer than his intentions would have. He returned to his desk because the desk was a raft. At 4:40 a.m., the phone rang to ask for a late checkout, the voice brisk and embarrassed. Flight delay, the caller said. The tag on 908 had said, let me have more time for 3 nights in a row. Daniel granted the extra hours and pictured the tag nodding behind the door, satisfied. He added an extra hour beyond the policy and felt a small pleasure you could mistake for mercy. At 1:55 that same night, a boy no older than 12 came down with a woman who might have been his mother or might have been a life raft. He wore a t-shirt from a state choir and held a hotel pen like a talisman. He asked, very seriously, whether he could put a sign on the door that said, please do not disturb. And Daniel said they had those. He would bring one up, and the boy said, it's because the song is still in my head, and if someone knocks, it will fall out. Daniel brought the tag and hung it himself, and the boy cupped it with both hands as if listening to its temperature. Back downstairs, Daniel wrote, 311, keep the song. In the vents, faint as a good dream, he swore he heard a chorus hum a single note and hold it. The staff room was lit like a confession, bare tubes humming, paint scuffed gray by years of elbows. Lockers lined one wall, each dented with old stories. Daniel's locker had his last name on ripped label tape, the Ochoa a little crooked. He didn't keep much inside, an extra shirt in a sealed bag, a toothbrush, deodorant, one pair of black socks in case of accidents. He went in after his circuit, thinking to splash water on his face and let the mirror tell him he was still a person. The smell inside was bleach and fatigue-y and the ghost of someone's microwave lunch 5 days ago. His locker door stood slightly ajar. He felt it before he saw it. A small current of air that had no business moving in a room with no vents. He touched the cool metal. The hinge squeaked the way it always squeaked. He'd never had the heart to oil it. Hanging from the little punched-out handle was a red rectangle with white block letters. Do not disturb. He did not move for a long moment. The card swayed once, slow as breath. He looked around, stupidly, for a prankster. No one played. The morning laundry person wasn't due for an hour. The housekeeping lead who liked practical jokes had quit in spring. Mr. Finn didn't do jokes. He did aphorisms and kindness, which is different. Daniel reached up and pinched the corner of the tag between his fingers. The laminate was warm. What room? He whispered, because he didn't know how else to address it. The tag had no room, but somewhere inside the locker, a small thing tapped once, twice, like a pin knocking against the desk when the HVAC turns over. He opened the door. On the top shelf, beside the spare deodorant, lay his spiral. He hadn't put it there. He always kept it under the desk, second drawer, right side, behind the HVAC maintenance binder no one read. The spiral was open to the last filled page, and the last line had been underlined twice. Daniel Ochoa, do not disturb. He picked it up. The paper warmed his palm. He flipped back through pages for a familiar anchor. 215, forgive me. 709, stay awake. 422, forever. 311, keep the song. The ink proved he'd been real every night he'd been here. The locker smelled faintly of old paper, though there was none. He closed his eyes and listened. The staff room hummed its low institutional hum. Somewhere behind the wall, the ice machine vibrated. From the far hall, so faint it could have been inside his memory, a tag said his name like a parent who has stopped using nicknames. He set the spiral back down and took the tag off the locker handle to stop it swinging. He held it. The red rectangle made a small sound, the faintest rasp, like two fingers rubbed together to say hush. He carried it to the sink because he needed water, because water is what you do. He ran the tap, splashed his face, set the tag face down on the counter as if he could drown the letters. When he lifted it again, Small beads of water clung to the laminate and magnified each serif. Do Not Disturb looked like it had learned to breathe underwater. He hung the tag back on the locker because you return things you're not ready to throw away. He closed the door until the latch clicked. The relief that followed was out of proportion. On his way out, he checked the staff door without knowing he was going to. No tag, just a small brass plate that said employees only. The swing from his dream belonged entirely elsewhere. Back at the desk, the pins on chains hung still. He stood very still himself and waited to see if the air would flinch. It did not. His pulse did. He sat and wrote in the spiral, "Locker, tagged." Book moved. I didn't move it. His hand shook so badly he smudged the ink and for once didn't care. He lifted the receiver of the house phone, just to hear dial tone, a sound that carries its own small mercy, and a click cut in before the tone could establish itself. "Front," he said softly. "You saw it," Finn said, like a man saying he'd watched the weather move in from the river. "I didn't hang it," Daniel said. "Doesn't matter who hangs it," Finn answered. "Matters who obeys it. Take your time." "How much do I have?" Daniel asked, surprising himself with the absence of humor. Finn made a sound that might have been a laugh if laughter could afford to be tired. "As much as any of us. As much as the night grants before morning opens its mouth." The line clicked. The pins swung half an inch and then apologized to the placard with a little clink. At 2:02 a.m., an older woman in a black suit came to the desk with a baton case under one arm. She was in town for a rehearsal, but the orchestra had canceled. She needed quiet to think. "Not silence," she said precisely. "Just the noise that belongs to you." Daniel understood more than he wanted to. He gave her a high floor and promised the ice machine there was temperate. He walked past 531 later, and the tag said, in a rhythm that made his shoulders ease, "Let me hear only mine." In the vents he heard a chord settle, like crowded notes deciding to be a choir. In the service tunnel to the loading dock, a plastic crate had collected the week's lost property. Phone chargers, a paperback with a beach on the cover, a single glove. Underneath, someone had thrown a handful of old tags, pre-renovation, a different font, smaller hole. Daniel thumbed one, and it said nothing, dead as cardboard. He put it back and felt disloyal. The pens had moods. Daniel had learned this early, the way you learn the register of a dog's size. Some nights they were just pens, black-inked, unambitious. Some nights they swung lightly, as if to mark time. Tonight they wanted to write. He noticed it in the way the chains had wrapped themselves twice around their stems, as if bracing for work. He stood 2 feet back and watched. The nearest pen lifted itself the smallest measurable amount and touched the laminated guest signature log. The nib left a dot like a birthmark, then another, then a thin line, and when gravity had to be acknowledged again, it rested. He stepped forward and anchored the pad with his left hand and the pen with his right. "No," he said, ridiculous with gentleness, the way you speak to an animal you want to keep from sticking its paw where it will be hurt. "Not for you." He let go. The pen swung back and struck the pad again, and this time it traced his name in loops that looked like his father's. Daniel formed itself with a flourish, then Ochoa without flourish. The chain clicked like laughter. "Stop," he said, and went colder when he heard what he'd said out loud. The word belonged to out there. In here it sounded like he was interrupting a prayer. He clutched the pen, and it quieted, but the other 3 had gotten ideas. They tapped, eager, a litter of newborn punctuation marks try to nurse. He slid the pads into the drawer and shut it. The click was clean as linen folded right. The pens hung thwarted. He turned in his chair to face the lobby. The glass doors, the silent TVs, the floral arrangement no one had watered since noon, and felt the way a person feels after they do not look over the edge of something, the exhilarating lack of view and the shaking anyway. The phone rang. He lifted it with a relief that felt like rescue. "Front desk." "Don't tell me to stop," said the soft voice. "Celia." His breath left fast. "I wasn't talking to you." "I know." A rustle, maybe of sheets. "You were talking to them." He waited. "They'll keep writing your name until you let them finish," she said. "That's what the tags do. They ask, and ask until you hang them. Or until you lock the drawer and pretend the asking wasn't a real thing. Is there a third option? He said, too quick for humor. She was quiet for a moment. In that moment, he realized he could hear her vent whispering above the line. The words do not disturb drawn out into a lullaby. You can ask back, she said finally. Most people don't. Everyone thinks the tags are a one-way system. What would I ask? I don't know. He could hear her smile without seeing it. Maybe ask for your own door. He hung up and sat with the receiver on his shoulder long after the line had gone empty. The way you keep a book open long after you've stopped reading, because closing it would make the absence of words too plain. Somewhere a cleaning cruise cart clinked gently. Somewhere a guest laughed in their sleep. He opened the top drawer very slowly and let the pad see light. The pens did not immediately try for him. He loosened the chains around their stems one turn so they would stop looking strangled. Fine, he said, to the pens, to the tags, to the marble that pretended to be stone and the brass that pretended to be gold. Then write with me. He took the nearest pen and, with his own hand, in his own small, neat audit script, he wrote on a blank segment of the laminated pad. He half expected the pen to refuse the letters, to veer away at Daniel, as if it had laid claim to the name and would not share. Instead, the nib flowed easily, obligingly, and the pad took the ink. He tore the slip from the pad. Laminated sheets were not meant to tear, but the perforations the hotel insisted on were generous, and he held the little rectangle up against the lobby light. He had made a tag without a string. He did not hang it. He placed it in the drawer with the spiral, and closed the drawer and locked it, and put the key in his pocket with his thumb on it like a worry stone. The ice machine coughed twice in what he tried not to call approval. At 3:22 a.m., a woman in scrubs came down for a tea bag and hot water. She had creases at the corners of her eyes where masks had lived for shifts too long. She cradled the paper cup in two hands and confessed, not to him, but to the steam, I'm scared that if I sleep, I won't hear the pager. Daniel saw her room number in the corner of the screen and went upstairs later to check the door. The tag said nothing, but when he leaned close, he heard in the vents above it a low, endless ready, ready, ready. He wanted to unhook the whole duct and let the sound out somewhere it would be less cruel. Back at the desk, he wrote on the pad a second time, Do not disturb, 244, and slid under her door with the nightly weather report. The hotel had never offered weather. He didn't care. He went searching for room 0 because the notebook had said it, and the dream had said it, and the tag on his locker had told its little private bell. He took the service corridor behind the ice machine and found only conduit and a locked door painted gray. The paint had a patch the size of a tag where it had been cleaner, newer, protected. He pressed his ear to the metal and heard nothing, which in this hotel meant something. He did not write that down. He kept it like a stolen mint, tongue pressed to the roof of his mouth so it would dissolve slower. By the time August heat pressed against the glass doors, Daniel noticed the absences. First it was 422, the honeymoon suite already marked out of order. Then 319, the woman who waited for calls no longer appeared at the lobby phone. Her luggage vanished, her bill erased from the system overnight. Management claimed she had checked out quietly, but Daniel had printed the night audit himself. There was no record. The tag on her door still hung, whispering, Let them call back. I'll answer this time. Housekeeping swore the room was untouched. Bed made, towels folded, as though no one had ever stayed there. Next was 612, the hospital brochure guest. He had asked for an extra blanket on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday, his door was bare. The tag was gone, the room empty, the ledger showing no charge. The spiral grew heavier in Daniel's drawer. He wrote, Guests vanish. Tags remain. Hotel erases them, but keeps their wishes. He checked his locker. The tag was still there, swaying faintly. At 2 a.m., he leaned against the laundry chute and let the weight of the hush press him. Somewhere above, the vents murmured, Do not disturb, do not disturb, do not disturb. And for the first time, he thought, maybe the hotel is merciful. Maybe disappearing is simply another way of being kept. A man with a weather-beaten face checked in, no luggage, only a rolled-up map and boots caked with dust. He asked for a room close to an exit and smiled when Daniel offered the ground floor. That night, Daniel walked past 127. The tag whispered, Don't let me leave again. By dawn, the map lay folded neatly on the bed. The man was gone. The map showed no roads, only hallways, infinite, curling back on themselves like intestines. Daniel folded it, tucked it into the spiral, and didn't tell management. It was the ice machine that summoned him. At 3:03 a.m., the machine rattled louder than usual, shaking its own metal skin. Water dripped onto the carpet, darkening it like blood. Daniel crouched to check for leaks and noticed the wall panel beside it had shifted. Behind it was a narrow corridor, darker than service paint should be. He hesitated, flashlight in hand. The air inside smelled faintly of dust and ink. The hush was thicker, pressing on his ears until he felt like he'd dived underwater. At the end of the corridor stood a door, gray, unnumbered except for a brass disc the size of a coin. 0. A tag hung from its handle, older than the others. The red had browned to rust, the letters faint, but it swayed alive. Daniel, it whispered. He stepped closer, trembling. The tag swung harder. Audit yourself. Hang me. His hand hovered inches from the handle. Behind him, the ice machine exhaled cold air like a warning. He turned and fled, the corridor spitting him out into the familiar carpet hush. He returned to the desk and sat with the spiral open on his knees. His sweat smudged the ink, but the words remained. He wrote, Room 0 is real. The tag waits for me. A little boy appeared in the lobby at 4 a.m., barefoot, pajamas wrinkled. He asked Daniel if his mother had checked in. Daniel knelt, asked for her name. The boy shrugged. She said we'd meet in the place with all the doors. Daniel fetched security, but when they arrived, the boy was gone. Only a D&D tag lay on the carpet where he'd stood. It whispered faintly, Wait for me. Daniel picked it up and slid it into the spiral. He didn't show anyone. He found Celia waiting by the lobby clock. She looked thinner, shadows under her eyes. She didn't smile. They're choosing you, she said. You hear them louder every night. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Guests are disappearing. The rooms are empty, but the tags keep talking. And the hotel, he broke off. There's a door behind the ice machine. Celia closed her eyes, nodded slowly. Room 0. You know it. I dreamed it. The hallway with no end. The brass disc. I've never walked it, but it waits for me every night. I don't sleep. Her voice shook. Don't open it, Daniel. Once you go inside, you don't come back. That's what happened to the concierge. That's what happens to anyone who hangs a tag on themselves. He whispered, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. To rest. To stop. Celia grabbed his arm, fierce. Don't you dare. You're the one who keeps the ledger. You're the one who listens. If you go, who tells the day what the night wanted? Her grip softened. Her voice broke. Please, Daniel, let me be the one to stay awake. You keep writing. The pens on chains tapped once, sharply as though agreeing. The spiral in his drawer grew warmer, waiting. The glass over the lobby guest book had a small, almost invisible nick in one corner from a Bell's mis-hit years ago. Daniel liked that nick. It was a flaw he could rely on. He polished around it every night with the spray bottle and a microfiber cloth and told himself he was shining history. At 12:47 a.m., the flaw was gone. He didn't notice the absence until the cloth squeaked wrong. He braced the book with one palm and felt the glass surface give in a way it never had. The lock, an ornamental brass peg, lifted with insulting ease. Someone, something, had unlatched the case. The book itself was a relic from when people wrote their names to prove a night had happened. Big cream pages with faint green lines, a gilt border tired from admiration. Guests still signed on holidays, drunk on occasion, or sentimental. Daniel kept a column of fresh pens because people who wanted to be witnessed shouldn't have to ask for ink. Tonight, beneath the glass, signatures had thickened. Ink had crawled sideways, ivying over letters and swallowing flourishes. Mr. Alvarez's careful A in January blurred into a dark thicket. The honeymooners' cartoon hearts had wilted. On a blank page near the back, a fresh entry had appeared in a hand that wore his own face. Daniel Ochoa, do not disturb. He stood perfectly still, the hotel's hush balanced on his shoulders. The ice machine, far away, whispered in its throat. The pens on chains leaned toward the book. He lifted the glass and turned a page with fingertips that tried not to be hands. Beneath the list of names, wishes bloomed in the margins. Not his handwriting, worse, close to it. Each wish sat under a signature like a footnote the signer had meant to say but hadn't. R. Holcomb. Let me be alone, J. Jansen. Call me back, A. Alvarez. Forgive me, L. And T. Hearts. Let this last forever. He turned another page. The ink kept confessing. He found a name he didn't recognize, F. Navarro, and beneath it in a narrow hand. Keep me from choosing wrong. The book had been listening longer than Daniel had, and deeper. He reached the very back and found a seam, a thin lift in the end paper where someone once had hidden notes. Finn's concierge, he thought. He slid a nail under the edge and tugged. The paper came free with a tired sigh. Inside, in old ink that had browned like tea, a different script ran diagonal the way secrets always insist on taking their own direction. Do not disturb me until I become what I asked for. Leave me in the night that knows my name. Hang me on the door of my life, and go. He closed the book gently, hands shaking. The hotel had kept a second ledger all along, under the respectable one. An index of unsaid things. He set the glass down. The brass peg slid home with the quiet click of a manacle that fits. Someone cleared his throat. Daniel looked up, expecting a guest, finding instead Mr. Finn in the arch of the corridor, cap in hand. You opened it, Finn said, not accusing. His eyes were kind and tired and not surprised. It was already open, Daniel murmured. His voice sounded wrong in the lobby. Too loud, like he'd brought an out-of-town dialect to a room that had decided on one hush. They're writing wishes under the names. They always did, Finn said. The concierge just wrote them where we could see. The book writes where it wants. Why mine? Daniel asked, eyes sliding to the back page where his name had been printed in the hotel's way. Because you finally said it out loud, Finn said simply, as if he'd been in Daniel's mouth with him. Not to humans, to the room. Daniel gripped the edge of the guest book and felt the paper pulse, which was impossible, which was happening. Finn reached into his pocket and brought out something wrapped in tissue, the way men bring out jewelry in movies and apologies in funerals. He unfolded it to reveal a tag from before the renovation, a smaller hole, a rounder typeface, the red more brick than fire. From the old days, Finn said. If the new ones are too talkative. Daniel reached but did not take it. The ink of his name on the guest book gleamed like a sign over a door he hadn't opened. He closed the glass carefully and laid both palms flat until he could feel the weight of it. Do you think he wanted to go? Daniel asked, and they both knew which he. Finn considered the lilies in the lobby vase, silk and patient. I think he wanted the asking to stop, he said, and I think the only thing that makes asking stop is an answer. I don't know if door 0 is an answer or a different kind of question. There was nothing to say to that, not in the language the hotel allowed. They stood together, two men who had outlived better uniforms, and listened to the ice machine cough twice and apologize to the carpet. When Finn left, he dropped the old tag on the desk. It lay there between the pens like a retired soldier among recruits. Daniel wanted to honor it, and he wanted to put it in a drawer where it couldn't see. He did neither. He turned the lobby TV to the closed-circuit channel that showed the moonless pool outside, and he watched the blue-lit rectangle ripple with captured air, and the tag watched with him. At 2:06 a.m., housekeeping turned up a note under a pillow, folded into a triangle, addressed to whoever sleeps here next. The supervisor brought it down because there are protocols for notes. Daniel unfolded it and read, I'm sorry about the noise you'll hear in the vent. It's me. I can't stop asking for more hours. It isn't personal. He slid the note back under the pillow on principle. Some letters are not for the hotel to keep. A woman with a rolling suitcase checked in asking too many practical questions. Breakfast hours, nearest pharmacy, buses to the stadium. At 3:12 a.m., her tag said, let me be less brave. Daniel stood there with his hand on the brass and wanted to tell her that being less brave didn't mean giving up. It meant saying she was tired. He wrote 402, less brave, and thought of all the ways bravery had ruined people's sleep. The ice machine began leaking on purpose. Maintenance had replaced the hose last week, swore the seals were tight. Tonight, Water dribbled out again, runneling into the carpet with patient ruin. Daniel laid down a yellow caution. Wet floor sign, as if it were language the night respected, but the water kept choosing a direction. It traced a dark path along the baseboard and into the service panel he'd pried loose 2 nights before. He squatted, clicked his flashlight, and listened. The panel hummed like a sleeping animal. "You don't have to," he told the panel, which was a little like telling the moon to clock out. He heard it anyway, a soft metallic sigh from the hinge of a door deeper inside. Room 0 had a hinge. Room 0 was unlatched. He slid the panel aside and pointed the flashlight's pale point down the narrow corridor. The light dissolved sooner than it should have, as if the air had been thickened with some polite smoke. He took a step. Carpet hushed his shoe. The ice machine exhaled cold against his back like a mother with second thoughts. 2 steps, and the hotel's normal vents fell away. The hallway's sound changed to that dense underwater hush that always lived inside good earplugs. He could still hear his pulse. He could still hear his breath. He could hear, fainter, farther, the tags singing themselves like soft spinners and dehydrators don't. Do not. Do not. 3 steps, and the gray door with the brass disc stood at the end like a decision. 1. The tag swayed from its handle, old red, a little threadbare where fingers had worried it decades ago. It didn't speak this time. It watched. A quiet so specific it felt like a stare. "Hello," Daniel said, "because you greet a room even when the room is not a person. I'm here." The tag twitched once. The brass disc was cool even from here. He knew what temperature it would be under his palm. He knew the weight of the handle. His body had rehearsed it in 100 small ways, opening the supply closet, opening the safe, opening his own locker. Opening is a muscle. He stepped until his hand hovered over the handle and rested there, in the air, his skin feeling the pocket of cooler temperature that lives just off metal. The quiet gathered around his wrist like a guard. Behind him, someone whispered his name the way you tell someone to duck their head. "Daniel." He turned. Celia stood 3 paces back, barefoot, nightgown falling straight, eyes too awake. "You said you wouldn't," she said without accusation, only a soft, exhausted surprise. "You said you would write." He lowered his hand. The quiet pulsed like something displeased. The tag made a sound like a drop of water hitting a bowl. "I only wanted to see it," he said, and the words sounded like children explaining to glass how it's done no harm by breaking. Celia brave-faced a nod. "It looks like I thought. Old. Polite. In a hurry," he added, and she gave him the smallest lopsided smile for that, as if he named a personality trait in a plant. The door, as if losing patience with their wit, moved a degree toward open. A sliver of darker gray appeared. From within, the sound of all the hotel's tags braided into one long breath, an inhale with no exhale. Daniel's knees went watery, but his training did not. He reached sideways and flipped the wet floor sign toward the gap, as if ritual could shame a threshold into behaving. The yellow plastic settled, banal and cheerful, a chaperone at a rave. Celia's hand found his wrist. Her fingers were cold. "Not tonight," she said. He wanted to say ever and couldn't. They backed out together, walking the hush backward so it couldn't startle them. When they reached the ordinary carpet, the ice machine made a comforting dumb thunk, catching up to their decision. Daniel leaned a forearm against the machine's bright skin and let its cold eat some heat from his pulse. "We're losing guests," he said into the hum, because he needed the night to hear him tell the truth. "They vanish and the rooms unwrite them." "I know," Celia said. "I feel them go. Less weight in the hall. More words and events." "Maybe that's okay," he said. "Maybe some people ask for that. Maybe forever is a room for certain kinds of sore." She shook her head quick. "Maybe, but you're not sore that way. You keep us in your book. You keep the day honest about who we were. If you go through that door, the book loses a hand." He had seen hands en masse only twice. The choir kids' rehearsal photo, all those small hands cupping notes in air, and the staff photo from a decade ago in the banquet hall, hands folded because instructions required it. He did not want to be a missing hand in a picture. "Okay," he said, and meant only tonight. It was the most he could mean. They replaced the service panel together, The way you tuck a child's blanket, precise, corners not too tight. The wet floor sign stared at them with its cheerful Panic Man glyph skidding on a puddle that had already been mopped. Daniel left it there anyway. Prophecies are props too. At 4:03 a.m., the man with the map checked back in. He had a new map and the same boots. He didn't meet Daniel's eyes. Different room, he said, voice like laundry steam. Daniel gave him 903. The tag there said promptly, "Let me not get lost where the rooms look like roads." He woke Daniel at 5:11 with a request for a cab to nowhere in particular. Daniel dialed the number of a driver who didn't ask questions and wrote in the spiral, 903, a map is not a promise. Housekeeping reported a guest who had not left his room in 3 days. Food tray stacked. The tag said keep knocking. Daniel knocked, and the guest answered with a composed stare and said, "You're the first person who asked whether I wanted to be disturbed before disturbing me." They stood in that grammar for a full minute before the guest took the tag off his own door and handed it to Daniel. "Hold this for me," he said, and went to sleep. Morning had a way of arriving all at once when there was no sunrise to grade its entry. One moment the lobby was a controlled aquarium. The next it was a tank with lilies that looked tawdrier in daylight, and a business traveler asking whether the bell would call in the car, and a child dragging a rollerboard like a wounded animal. Day shift staff arrived with coffee lids that squeaked. Daniel should have gone home. He stayed. He told himself he was auditing a sticky batch of banquet charges. He told himself he was waiting to hand off to the manager in person. He told himself leaving would be rude with the staff door wearing his fear like a coat in the next room. At 7:12 a.m., Celia came down. She had slept a little. He could tell by the way her shoulders drooped and the way she wore a smile in the unconvincing hope it would get ahead of bad news. She held her room key like a ticket you keep after the show to prove something. "They'll ask again tonight," she said, no greeting. "They'll be louder." "I know," he said. He slid the guest book out from under the glass with a motion he intended to be casual and failed to make so. "Look." She leaned, stood very still, then whispered, "Oh." Her finger hovered over the page with his name, respectful as if it were a headstone. "Did you write this?" "No," he said, and heard the strange relief of being able to say that honestly and still not be comforted. "Or maybe I did while I was asleep and dreamed about right angles." She read the old secret under the end paper, "Hang me on the door of my life and go," and shook her head. "They always have a last word." "Not always," he said, nodding toward the lobby where Mr. Alvarez, robe traded for a suit this morning, was writing his signature dutifully on a form that did not require it. Mr. Alvarez caught Daniel's eye and lifted a hand in a small wave, like a man nodding to a favorite mailbox. "Promise me something," Celia said, not looking away from the guest book. "If I can," he said. When it asked tonight, she said, "Say no once out loud to the air. Don't think it. Say it." Command voice. "I think they need to hear you choose." He wanted to ask how she knew and then remembered the ways people learn things they wish they didn't. "Okay," he said. She nodded, satisfied, and left to buy an orange juice from the market cooler that always teeth chattered when you opened it. He watched her exact the dignity of a receipt from the machine and loved her for it. He did go home then, slept 2 hours in a room that felt like a hotel that had been denied a name, showered, ate whatever version of cereal is closest to ritual, and came back early because the day had too much edge without the carpet to sand it. Night met him like a coat he knew, heavy, smelling faintly of old lemon and hands. The pins on chains swung once in greeting. The ice machine coughed to clear its throat. His locker tag waited with the indifference only objects can afford to have. The evening clerk left a pile of sticky notes like a sacerdotal offering. Comped bar charge, VIP coming in late, a wedding party begging for an extension on the ballroom. Daniel gathered the notes and slid them beneath the keyboard as if filing them with the other things that thought they were important. At 12:03, the vent started the chant. "Do not disturb braided under keep knocking braided under let me be less brave braided under forgive me." The sound built like cafeteria noise layered over ocean noise layered over a fan you swear you turned off. The tags trembled in sympathy. "Finn," he said into the house phone. "It's loud." "It will be," Finn said, and Daniel did not ask if the concierge's night had been loud too, just before he stopped being a man who needed a chair. At 1:02, Celia called. "Don't forget," she said, and he loved that she could say that to a person whose entire job title was memory. Out loud, he hung up and stood. The lobby's polished brass ran its reflection trick and made him look like a man in a suit. He straightened for no one and walked toward the service panel, because at some point walking is the only way to prove you have ankles. Behind the ice machine, the panel came away with less resistance than the last time, as if it had learned not to pretend. Inside, the corridor held its breath. The door at the end thought about being open. He went 3 steps in and said, in a voice he had learned from policies and receipts and men with smiles like smoke, "No." The sound of it startled him. The tags startled too, a little gust down the hallway, the red cards bobbing on their strings like fishes when someone taps glass. The vents hiccuped and changed key. He said it again, to be sure, because repetition is how you learn anything worth learning. "No," Daniel said to the brass disc, to the swing in the staff room, to the spiral, to the guest book that had eaten his name and written it out again, to Mr. Alvarez's grief and the honeymooners forever and the conductor's chord and the nurse's ready and the boy's song. "No, tonight." Something difficult eased in the tubing behind the walls. The ice machine exhaled once and fell quiet, as if its lungs could stop performing being lungs. Behind him, a new voice in the vents, thin, bright, determined, wove itself under his refusal. "Okay, okay, okay." He let himself believe it was Celia's tag practicing consent. He stepped backward out of the corridor and replaced the panel and set the wet floor sign where it would trip no one's eyes, and he went to his desk and unlocked the drawer and took out the little laminated slip where he had written his name like a warning, and he did not hang it. He set it face down in the drawer and placed the spiral on top of it like a palm on a fevered brow. The drawer shut with the good sound things make when their corners aren't chipped. He sat until his pulse was a document again. And then the hotel reminded him it liked drama. The lobby doors opened with too much theater, and a man with a smile walked in early, duffel bumping his knee, his body already treating the desk like furniture he owned. "Good evening," the man said, all courtesy. "I'm looking for Celia." Daniel placed both hands on the counter flat. The pens chimed their small chains as if they remembered their lines. "I can't share guest information," he said in the voice the night had tuned. "And I can't disturb her." "Just call." The man insisted, gentled the way you gentle a horse because you like performances. "Tell her I'm here. She'll want to know." Daniel did not reach for the phone. He let the silence do the heavier work. The tags in the hallway behind him began to tremble in sequence like stadium fans doing a wave. He put no theater in his face. "No," he said a third time. Not explained, not couched. No, like a door that doesn't have to apologize for being a door. The man discovered a limit in himself he had hoped not to test tonight. He smiled to cover it, and found the smile didn't know how to be a bandage. He set his hand on the counter. The move people make when they decide to move past please, and in that moment the pens on chains lifted their own small weights and wrote in unison across the laminated pad. The man blinked. The shape of the letters rearranged his imagination of what kind of place this was. He took his hand back. He looked at Daniel and saw, maybe for the first time, a person who could say a word and mean it on behalf of the building. "I'll leave a note," he said, and did not. He turned, and the glass doors welcomed him back into a daylight that had been made to wait in the parking lot. The night softened around Daniel like cloth that knows a shoulder. Behind him, the tags settled. The vents dropped a relief sigh. The ice machine chuffed once, almost companionable. Daniel wrote in the spiral, said no out loud. Held. He underlined it twice and didn't mind that the ink bled into the tired paper. He added, smaller. The pens helped. He allowed himself a half laugh, the quiet kind you keep for good news you're afraid to wake. At 3:58, a note appeared at the desk in careful block letters. To whoever is keeping the night from knocking. Thank you. No room number. No name. He put in the spiral because gratitude, like grief, doesn't belong to housekeeping. At 5:20, Finn came by on his second-to-last circuit. Daniel showed him the pen's neat protest on the pad. Finn snorted the way he snorts when pleased. You used a voice, he said. He set the old brick-red tag on the counter again, touched it with 2 fingers. When the time comes, this weighs less than it looks. He nodded toward the staff room. And more. He tucked the tag back in Daniel's palm, as if returning a coin from a country he'd visited years ago and wasn't done with. By late September, the hotel was too quiet for its occupancy rate. Daniel ran the numbers. Half the rooms should have been filled, yet halls felt hollow. He knew why. Housekeeping whispered of beds made without hands, towels folded untouched, doors that never needed keys. Guests erased as if they'd never written themselves into the ledger. At 2:04 a.m., the honeymoon suite's faded tag dropped to the carpet on its own, curled and brittle. Daniel picked it up and it dissolved in his fingers, whispering one last forever before it went silent forever. He added to his spiral, vanishings accelerating. The paper almost seemed relieved to take the words. Later that night, in the stairwell, Celia met him. She looked thinner, as if staying awake had burned through her frame. They're moving on without us, she said. Some of them wanted it. But you, Daniel, they're waiting for you. He nodded. He didn't need convincing. Each corridor bent toward him now. Each pen leaned closer. Even the ice machine shuddered at his approach, ready to cough up the chorus. You still have a choice, Celia said. Say no again. Say it until they believe you. Daniel looked at her, and something softer than exhaustion lived in his face. And if the night doesn't believe me? Celia's eyes brimmed. Then let it take me instead. He wanted to argue, but the hush in the stairwell swallowed protests. The hotel didn't want debate. It wanted decision. At 3:30 a.m., Daniel found a suitcase outside 511, handle upright, tag fluttering, don't remember me. He wheeled it to Lost and Found. Inside, nothing but air, faintly perfumed. He left the case open, and it filled the service hall with a breeze that smelled like absence. The ice machine screamed that night. Not a cough, not a hum, but a full-body shriek of metal. Guests stirred. Doors opened on sleepy eyes. Daniel shushed them, smiled with policy, but inside he was already moving. Behind the machine, the panel gaped. The wet carpet let him in. The corridor was waiting. He knew it by smell now, dust-stink breath. The tags on the walls swayed though no air stirred. Everyone whispered the same phrase, braided, overlapping until it became chant. Hang me, hang me, hang me. At the far end, the gray door stood ajar. The brass disc gleamed. The old tag on its knob wagged, faintly like a heartbeat. Daniel walked forward. Each step sank deeper into hush. The vents above fell silent, as if listening. He stopped at the threshold. The door's crack revealed only darkness, but not an empty darkness, an occupied one. He could feel wishes inside, thousands restless as wind in curtains. The tag lifted on its own, brushed his chest. It whispered his name again, the way a lullaby says it softer each time. Daniel. Behind him, Celia's voice called down the corridor, don't. He turned. She stood by the ice machine, trembling, barefoot, as always, tears running like she hadn't slept in months. Please, if you go, I'll be alone with them. Daniel smiled sadly. You won't be alone. They're with you every night. He touched the tag. The wish stilled. Earlier that evening, a violinist had come down, restless, asked if the desk had a practice room. Daniel pointed to the ballroom. Empty. Hours later, he checked the door. Her tag said, let me play for no one. From inside came music so fragile it made his eyes wet. In the morning, she was gone. The ballet across a chair, vibrating faintly, though no hand drew it. Daniel held the old laminated slip he'd written weeks ago. Do not disturb. Daniel Ochoa. The pens had helped make it. It had waited in his drawer like a prophecy. He lifted it now. The corridor tags hushed. The vents held their breath. Even the ice machine froze mid-cycle. Celia cried out once, Daniel, please. He turned to her, voice soft. This is the audit, Celia. Every wish accounted for. Even mine. He hung the tag on the gray door's handle. The hush deepened into something absolute. The corridor exhaled. The tag's red brightened, fresh as paint. The door swung inward. Darkness met him, warm as breath beside his bed. It smelled of every wish he'd ever logged. Forgiveness, forever, less brave, keep the song. They wrapped him, cradled him. He stepped inside. The hush closed behind him. Celia fell to her knees by the ice machine, sobbing. But even she heard it then, the softest whisper, kind, tired at peace. Do not disturb. The door shut. The night kept him. In the morning, Mr. Finn arrived for his shift. He polished the brass bell, checked the guest book, nodded once at the empty chair. On Daniel's locker, the tag hung still. It did not sway. It did not whisper. It simply was. Finn smiled sadly, touched it with 2 fingers, and whispered back. Rest well, son. He wheeled his card down the hall. The pins on chains settled, finally still. The hotel hummed on, patient, waiting.